Hey guys, welcome to my home state, Colorado, and to Red Rocks, Colorado, where if you've been here, you've seen some of the most spectacular concerts. It's an open air venue where, well, you just get to enjoy the music in the great Colorado outdoors. But we're not here because of Red Rocks, which is right there. Red Rocks, get it? But because of this white Mercedes EQB 350. Now, the GLB upon which this is based is one of my favorite Mercedes. It's a small crossover, and now of course you can get it in electric form. And in this video we're going to crawl all over the vehicle. We're going to go hands-on, and then of course I'm going to show you what's under the hood. We're going to talk about charging, we're going to talk about pricing, and then we're going to take it on the road, and best of all, we're going to take it up Floyd Hill, up the highway, to see how it does on the highway. So let's start where we always start, which is under the hood. Now, as you know, if you've been following TFL, you'll note that a lot of new Mercedes, you can't open the hood on. But this is not the case with the EQB. Now, just for perspective, like I said, this is based on the GLB, which is their small crossover. So, under the hood of the GLB would be, of course, a internal combustion engine. But is there a frunk? What do you say, Cole, my videographer? Yes or no? What's your guess? He's saying that there's no frunk. You are correct. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. There is no frunk. There is an electric mishmash of cables, of cooling, of inverters, of reverters, basically a bunch of, looks like a bunch of cooling hoses and a bunch of electrical conduits, as you would see in many electric cars. But I'm kind of disappointed. I was kind of hoping that it would have a frunk. You know, a frunk has become kind of the thing that identifies electric cars, besides, of course, the fact that they usually don't have an open grille because they don't need to cool an internal combustion engine. So no frunk, but in case you're wondering, this is the EQB 350. There's also a 300, but the 350 is a dual motor, in other words, all-wheel drive, 4MATIC if you're speaking Mercedes version of the car. It puts out 288 horsepower, but get this, 324 pound-foot of torque, which is a lot. So the cool thing about the EQB is you can get it in a 3-row. It's probably one of the smallest 3-rows you can buy in the market. Unfortunately, this one does not have the 3rd row, so it has more space in the back. Now, of course, the 3rd row in a vehicle this size is tiny, so you know it's good for the kiddos, but not much else. But now you get oodles of space back here, good enough for 2 of our gear bags. Well, let's peek under here. I always like to look in here to see what's hiding back there. Looks like a charging cable. Yeah, of course there's a charging cable. And if you're curious, charging rate is about over 100 kilowatts. We just did a video over at TFL EV, and if you're wondering why this isn't over at TFL EV, because this is an EV, it's because, well, we needed a car video, so quite honestly, we were putting it on the car channel. Plus, it's a very comprehensive review, so I thought maybe all you car guys out there and gals would enjoy it on car, not just for you EV lovers. And if you don't like EVs, well, head on over to TFL Truck. Oh, actually, don't head over to TFL Truck, because over there we're drag racing the new Ford Lightning Pro versus the Lariat that we own versus the Rivian versus, get this, the Hummer EV. But we'll be doing regular ICE trucks very soon. Anyway, let's check out the back seat. Let's hop in and see how much room there is. Nice thing about this vehicle is that there are vents for rear seat passengers, and I do have the front seat where I'm driving it, so keep in mind I'm pretty tall, 6'2", so the great thing about this is it's kind of taller than it is wider, which means usually there's plenty of headroom, and of course there is plenty of knee room. You know, not massive, but it does, and I'll show you when I get to the front, have a dual sunroof, which would allow my head a little bit more room. But yeah, it's comfortable back here. I could actually probably cross-country this thing even sitting back here, especially with its own outlets for cooling and heating back here. A little bit of plastic, you know, a little bit of leather. It is an entry-level Mecedes-Benz crossover. Now, if you're wondering about price, The EQB 300 starts at about 50,000. This one's more like 60,000 with the 4MATIC. I've seen it, I looked it up, they're already in dealerships. I've seen them for about 64,000. And in terms of competition, it's going to compete with the upcoming Audi Q4 e-tron, which Tommy will be driving in about a week and a half. So we'll have a review of that. The ID4, Tesla Model Y, probably vehicles like that. So, shall we jump in and take a look at the interior and go for a ride? Now, the question that's probably most interesting for all of you electric vehicle types is how big is the battery? And the battery is, once you go around, Cole, and we'll start it up, the battery is about 67 kilowatt hours, which is, you know, okay. It's not stupendous, it's not horrendous, somewhere in between. Mercedes says that you're going to get over 200 miles of range, maybe, I don't know, 206-ish. That's at least the car said when I got in it and it was fully charged. So that's kind of on the low end, but you know, I have found that with electric cars, as long as you end up with about 200 miles of range, they end up working quite nicely because most people charge them at home at night. It does make for a little bit more interesting road tripping, especially with a charge rate, like I said, of about 100 or 100 plus kilowatts. Not grand. We just did that charging video with the Hummer EV. That video is up at alltfl.com, and that one blew our minds because it charged at, get this, over 300 kilowatts initially on an 800 volt system, which is very impressive. So if you're familiar with the Mercedes layout, you'll be familiar with this vehicle. Let's open the sunroofs. It's cool, dual sunroofs. Is that better than one giant one? Not sure about that, but it's pretty cool. Now, the biggest difference between this and its gasoline powered, dare I say ICE, internal combustion engine powered counterpart, is that it's heavier because batteries are heavy. And that's, you know, both a blessing and a little bit of a, I don't want to hit this cross track that's pulling in here, and a little bit of a demerit, because in terms of the plus side, the heavier vehicle is kind of the better the ride. You've got this weight that's sitting down very low, giving you a low center of gravity, and that means it tracks really nicely down the road. The downside is, of course, the more weight, the less agile it is, the worse the, in this case, MPGE are. But I like it. You know, like I said, this has always been one of my favorite Mercedes. It's just kind of, you know, some vehicles are the right car at the right price at the right time. And they are everything they say they are. They don't aspire to be more. They don't miss the mark by being less. And this is one of those cars. It is what you expect it to be, a small utilitarian crossover. And by electrifying it, I think that Mercedes has done a really wonderful thing by giving people choice. And I'm all about choice. I think if you give consumers choice, then you won't get all that backlash about, well, you know, we have to force electric vehicles down people's throats, or we're doing the carrot approach to making electric vehicles, you know, more approachable and making them less expensive. So give people the choice, let them decide what their favorite form of propulsion is. Is it electric or is it gasoline? And let them do it on a level playing field. I think that's the way that it should be. Anyway, Cole, you want to turn the camera, kind of show them? We are above Denver, Colorado. Oh, look at a charging station, speaking of which. We are above Denver, Colorado. This is a beautiful place to go for a concert. And, you know, if we could drive into Red Rocks, I'd show it to you, but we can't. Even though you can go there during the day and, you know, walk up the stairs or run up the stairs. It's a very popular place for people to go and exercise. And it's just, you know, 20 minutes or so from downtown Denver. So if you're ever in Denver and you want to see a really cool place that's not far, I would highly recommend coming here. Do you know if it's exit? I'm gonna go left, I think, yeah, because we're trying to get to the highway. Anyway, that's enough of the tourism portion of this review. One of the cool things, of course, Mercedes does is it has a voice-activated system that keeps getting better. So let's try the classic Mercedes thing, and that is this. Hey, Mercedes,
How can I help?
tell me a joke.
Why should you never eat a clock? It's too time consuming.
Mercedes, you tell the best dad jokes. You really do. Should we do one more or why not? We got a ways to get to the highway. Hey, Mercedes,
How may I help you?
tell me a joke.
Why is 6 afraid of 7? Because 7, 8, 9.
Anyway, the idea is that you can ask Mercedes, I gotta be careful when I say that word, questions like, get me to the local restaurant or Red Rocks, and then never have to use the interface. In general, I do like the way that Mercedes has styled the interior here. These multiple round vents are really sexy, and there are hard buttons for HVAC, which I think is a great thing because, for instance, our Lightning doesn't have that, and if the screen locks up or if the screen is slow, then obviously you can't get to your air conditioner or your heater. And then Mercedes does a touch screen over here. Oops, see, I said it. Never mind, cancel. I think I'm going to call this car Merc from now on. No, don't call my father. No, cancel, cancel, cancel.
Sorry.
There we go. So the Merc has redundancies built into it, which are great. So you can use it as a touch screen, or you can use it over here with your finger, and then there are hard buttons, volume over here, and then you can change the drive mode from individual to comfort to eco to sport, which is where I want to be at, because we are going to do an acceleration test getting on the highway to see just how much power this has. Now, of course, you know that the great thing in the war between ice and battery is that battery has instant torque because electric motors have instant torque. And so one of the things that is really fun about all electric cars is that they're just really snappy and really quick. Obviously, cars like the Tesla Model S Plaid are now in the 2-second range, which is once again a bad and a good thing. It's a good thing because when I was a kid growing up, 2 seconds to 0 to 60 was mind-blowing. It's bad because I don't know how much faster you get because you're reaching the adhesion limits. You're also probably going to end up having to do rockets or something to actually go faster than that. But there isn't much faster that you can go, as I say, and then next year it'll be 1 second, and it'll fry people's brains because it'll push them to the back of their skull so quickly. Anyway, I digress. The cool thing about electric cars is that they do accelerate very quickly, so we shall see how this accelerates. Now, in terms of ride, I find this car very comfortable. I have plenty of headroom, I have plenty of shoulder room, the seats are comfortable, and the ride is, well controlled and yet sporty, and that's a hard thing to manage, especially in an SUV. They tend to be top heavy and they tend to wallow and they tend to not want to basically carve corners, but because of the battery weight and because of the fact that the center of gravity is so low, this car doesn't have those issues. And at the end of this review, I'm going to let you know which one I would rather buy. Whoa, we did bottom out a little bit there. Interesting. Maybe that's the downside of the weight. See, this is great. So why we go on these test drive loops. All right, here we go. We're going to give it the beans, accelerating on I-70, and just see how quick it is. All right, 3, 2, 1. Here we go. A little bit of front wheel spin, even though this is an all-wheel drive car. 55, 60, 66, and that would be breaking the speed limit. And this is Floyd Hill, which is a really cool place. It's the first big hill you hit when you're coming up to Denver, going to the ski areas. And this is where there's 3 lanes. And so oftentimes people kind of feel like they're let loose and they really get going. And you can tell just how much power a car has on this hill because it is very steep. It's hard to show that on video, but it is very steep. And in terms of torque, the amount of power that a car has to push you through the wall, not the amount of power that it has to hit the wall at top speed, because that's the difference between kind of torque and horsepower. This car is just phenomenal. It's effortless. I just use my big toe and it just goes to 100%. Burns a lot of electrons, but nevertheless, just almost effortlessly goes up this hill. When I was a young man in college, my buddy Tracy had a Cuda, and this was, oh gosh, back in the 80s, late 80s, when a lot of cars were still choked from the emissions of the 70s, and we would come flying up this hill with those glass packs and that Cuda just roaring against the sides of the mountain. We were literally the Cuda among the little tiny fishies on the highway, and I feel a little bit like that, except of course you don't have the wonderful sound of that Hemi V8, but you do have all-wheel drive, which is great for Colorado in the winter, and you do have plenty of passing power, because what ends up happening going up this hill is that the slower cars, especially trucks, struggle, and so you need to have plenty of power to pass. Now today we do have a pretty warm day, so 88 degrees out there, which is really good for batteries. Batteries don't like being cold. They don't mind being hot, at least they're not too hot. They kind of like being at the same temperature that we are. And at 88, you're probably going to get the best range out of them. The one thing that does worry me about this, and we've owned now a Model 3, a Model X, a Model Y for long-term reviews. We have seen up to, and sometimes beyond, 25% of range degradation when it gets cold, especially here in the mountains. The upside to living in the Front Range, which is where we just left, basically the foothills of the mountains, is that you've got mainly warm weather. Don't tell anybody, but our average year-round temperature in the Front Range, Denver, Boulder, Colorado Springs, Fort Collins, is about 55 degrees. But when you start going into the mountains, you end up with 8 months of winter a year, and here you get snow and you get much colder temperatures. And so let's say that this car will lose, which it most likely will, even though the batteries are climate controlled, 25% of its range at 200 miles of range or so. Now you're talking down to 150 miles of range in the middle of winter. And that's getting to the point where range anxiety becomes an issue, where road tripping becomes an issue, where using it as a daily driver becomes an issue. So I would love to see this car with more power and more battery and more range. It's probably because, like I said, this isn't a dedicated platform. By the way, here comes a new Bronco. Look at that. He's got the back open. Looking good. September 4th, temporary plate that expired 2 weeks ago. This is the times we live in. So I'm going to pull off the highway over here because I didn't want to give it a highway test. I'm very pleased with this vehicle's highway performance. Now, if we're lucky, we can actually see some buffalo up here because this is where the buffalo hang out. So let's see if we can see the buffalo. And you'll also get your first shot of the mountains as we come to the top of Floyd Hill up here. So let's see if we can see the mountains, if there are not too many clouds, and if we can get some buffaloes up here. Once again, I've turned into the Colorado Tourism Board. Usually the buffalo hang out there, and no buffalo today. Wah, 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 wah. Should have planned this better. But that's okay. If you guys go up here, when you get to the top, take a look right, and if there are buffalo, they will be there or on the other side of the street. So let me park this and let's wrap this up, and I'll let you know which one I would buy, if I'd buy the GLB or the EQB. It is a surprisingly easy car to drive. Let's see how these backup cameras are. Sometimes that's not bad. Yeah, let's see what kind of views we have here. You got a back view there. You got a front. That's a back view. You got a front view. So we don't have a 360 view. You should probably have to pay more money for that. Let's see what that one does. That's probably just your sensors that will sound if you're about to hit something. So let's see if that happens. I bet you that's what's going to happen. Beep, 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 beep. I'm not going to hit that tree. So that's good. All right. So then park. Once again, turn it off. Let's wrap this video up. All right, the question that I asked is, which one would you get? Would you get the EQB or the GLB? And the great thing, of course, is that there's choice. So the answer is, really depends on how you're going to use it. So if I lived over there, and that, of course, is the mountains, where it's 8 months of winter a year, I definitely get the GLB because 150 miles of range is just not going to be enough. You're going to get into range anxiety, and you're not going to be a happy camper. But if I live down there, and by down there I mean I'm pointing to Denver, of course, then I would definitely get the EQB, because at that point you've got over 200 miles of range and it's much cheaper to fill it up, charge it up, and you get more power, more torque, and probably a little bit better ride. So there you have it. As always, this is Roman reporting for TFL Car this time. Be sure to go to alltfl.com where you'll have access to all of our videos, including our TikToks, our podcasts, and what Andre's up to, which is drag racing trucks today. See you guys next time. Ciao.